Chapter 5, Section 3, this is slope-intercept form. This is perhaps one of the most important sections in Algebra 1. This is something that you have probably seen already, but it's also something that is essential to almost most things that we do in Algebra 1 and going on to Algebra 2. So very, very important section. And our objectives are to be able to write linear equations using slope-intercept form and to graph linear equations. I would suggest that you write down this part and this part and this part, as well as the pictures if you need them. I think the pictures help you I'll kind of give you something to reference, things to notice, now how to keep them separate, make sure that the purple line goes with the purple equation, but it's just the look of different equations and what happens when the slope changes and the y-intercept changes and so on. Okay, so essentially, the parent function is the simplest function with these characteristics. Okay, and what we're talking about, a family of functions, is just a group of functions. So the parent function is the simplest, and that's this guy right here, y equals x. That's the simplest form of a line. A linear parent function, I'm sorry, that is the parent function for lines. And then what we kind of refer to these as just different functions from the parent function. An equation, a linear equation, is just an equation that models a linear function. Okay, so like I said, equation, function is pretty interchangeable. It still is the same here. So what we're looking at is linear equations and how they look on graphs and stuff. Okay, the big thing to keep in mind, there are two major pieces to a linear equation, and that is the slope, which we dealt with in the first section, and the y-intercept. And the y-intercept is just the place where it crosses the y-axis. Slope-intercept form is this: y equals mx plus b. Now make sure that you know that m is your slope and b is your y-intercept. This is as important of a formula as we can get. So make sure that you have this, you highlight it, you bold it. This is a very important formula. So if we had to identify what are the slope and the y-intercepts of that graph, we just remember that whatever numbers with the x is your slope. So m in this case is 5, because that's what goes with your x, and your y-intercept, which is also referred to sometimes as your b, is -2. The reason it's -2 is because this is supposed to be a plus sign, right? This is supposed to be a plus sign, so if it's a minus sign, that means it's a negative y-intercept. Okay? So again, your m is 5, your y-intercept, which we'll refer to from now on as b, is -2. Remember, m is, this is your slope. Okay. If we do this the other way now, if they give us the slope and the y-intercept, we'd have to write an equation. And that's as simple as just saying y equals our slope, which is -4/5 x, and then we use our y-intercept, which is a +7, so it's +7. That's an equation. So which equation represents the line shown? Okay, so what I would do here is the first thing I look at is where is the y-intercept? The y-intercept is right here at -2. So that means that b has to be -2, which means that this is +1, that's out. This is +1, that's out. So now we're down to one of these two. Then the second thing is I wonder, what is my slope? What is my m? Slope is rise over run, so it rises 1, 2. and it runs 1 over 1. So that's a slope of 2, which means that it's D is the equation for this line. Okay. What do you expect the slope of the line to be if you look at this? So now, if you just look at this, now we're not asking for exactly, but if you look at this, the line goes down. If I asked you what was the rise from this point to say this point, it doesn't matter which 2 we pick. It goes down 2, and to the right. So what do you expect the slope to be? I would say I would expect the slope to be a negative slope. For B, it says what is the equation? So we have to figure out what is M. M was down 2, it's negative 2. To the right 2, that's positive 2, so we had a slope of negative 1, and a y-intercept of right here, positive 2. So our equation is y equals negative, now you can write the negative 1 or just write negative x plus 2. What is the equation in slope-intercept form? What equation in slope-intercept form represents the line that passes through those 2 points? So now what you have to do is you have to think about, all right, what did this look like? How did this work in our graph? Okay, so we could do a couple of things. We could graph it first, and then we could figure out where our y-intercept lies. First thing I'm going to do, figure out my slope. Excuse me 1 second. Sorry about that. Okay, so the first thing we can do is figure out our slope. So remember, we give these values like x1 and y1, x2 and y2. I'm going to move this down a little bit. So to figure out our slope is y2, which is negative 8, minus y1, which is 1, divided by x2, which is 5, minus x1, which is 2. So negative 8 minus 1 is negative 9, and 5 minus 2 is 3. Negative 9 divided by 3 is negative 3. So there's our slope, and like I said, we could graph the line if we wanted to and figure out where does it cross the y-axis, you know. But sometimes that's not always as accurate as we need it to be. If our line, if we graph our line incorrectly or anything like that, and it's sometimes more work than we need to. So what we can do is start off our equation in slope-intercept form, which right now we know it's y equals negative 3x plus b. And we don't know what b is. To find b, though, we can use 2 values, x and y, that we already know. We already know that the line either passes through this point or this point. And so we can use either one we want. Now, these are bigger numbers, so it's going to be a little bit more difficult, so I'm going to stick with these. So I'm going to plug 2 in for x and 1 in for y. So y is 1, x is 2, and I'm going to just solve for b. Negative 3 times 2 is negative 6. Add 6 to both sides, and we get b equals 7. So now I know that my y-intercept is 7, which means I go back to what I knew here, negative 3x, and then I put in 7 because now I know it. And that is my equation. Now if we were asked to graph, the first thing I like to do is identify my slope is 2, right there. My y-intercept is negative 1, and I always start at my y-intercept, negative 1. My slope is 2, which is the same as 2 over 1. So that's my rise over run. So that means up 2 over 1. Up 2 over 1. Up 2 over 1. And there, as best I can, is my line. That right there is the type of stuff that you'll be asked to do for this section. Okay, so make sure that you write down any questions that you have and bring them up tomorrow.